In today's show, we're talking tiers again. We're looking at the small forward position, Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_Beeble and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Remember, Basketball Monster is open, so go ahead and get your subscription over there for the projections, the tools, everything that you need, draft tracker, everything you need. If it's a points league, an auction league, a snake draft, a head-to-head category league, a 20-category league, a 20-team league, whatever, Basketball Monster adjusts whatever you need for your specific league. So go and check out our projections articles coming out as well over there. We're going to talk about some stuff, though, that is important for drafts coming up, and we've had two shows already. We've looked at tiers. We did the point guard and shooting guard tiers over the weekend, so if you haven't caught those shows, go and check them out. And we're going to talk about small forwards today. And of course, to talk about the small forwards, I have to be joined once again by Matt Smith of Basketball Monster. Here he is. Matt Smith is back with me. Smitty indeed. Matt, welcome back.
Thank you, J-Lo. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm ready to go. Your volume is much better after the point guard tiers where you were coming in real soft. It was just a lack of experience, I think, from having you on the show, just technical difficulties, but we're ready to go. We're dealing with technical problems across the first couple of shows. Hopefully we can smash this one out with no issues because we're talking small forward tiers. If you want to hear about what tiers are, go back to that point guard show, hear Matt whisper into the microphone and hear about all the info. And now let's talk about the small forwards because in tier 1, there's one bloke.
I'm a fun guy.
Yeah, there he is, Kawhi Leonard. Now, Matt, the risk, of course, with Kawhi is how many games is he going to play? I've got him missing quite a few back-to-backs. We don't know the schedule at this point. And I think that's one, to be honest, that's a great thing about this fantasy season is we don't know the schedule. So we don't have to worry about drafting for playoff schedule because it's literally not going to happen. It's impossible.
Yeah, for those wondering, the schedule should be out around the 1st of December. They're only going to announce the first half of the schedule, and then we'll get the second half later in the year. But that's going to really be an interesting point. A little wrinkle in the season as well, and something else for people to look at, those back-to-backs, who has a good start early and the good run home, and how you sort of juggle that, particularly in rotisserie leagues where you have to manage that games limit. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what the schedule looks like, how many back-to-backs there are. And yeah, that will dictate a lot in terms of Kawhi's value and where he gets landed in drafts if he does fall, into that late first round because people shy away from him. Yeah, we've got him projected at 58 games, so potentially missing, anywhere from 12 to 15 games, which will be a big chunk of the season. So yeah, we know his stats and his per game value is through the roof, but it's that total value that can really get you.
I was on record saying that in March or April last year, he was going to play in a back-to-back. Of course, I was cruelly dealt a blow. And probably the biggest loser out of all of the COVID situation is me not being able to get that proven right. The fact that we didn't get to see that happen, but in this compressed season, there's almost no way he's playing back-to-back. So while we have him projected high on a per-game basis, Yahoo's ADP's got him at 12. Would you take him in the first round?
I think I would have to. I saw you tweet out.
Yeah, after 9, it's rough.
After 9 is really rough, and then we get sort of into that range with LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Jason Tatum, Kawhi,
Kyrie, Embiid.
Kyrie, I don't really want. Embiid, I don't think I want. So for me, it's probably a toss-up between someone like, Kawhi and Jason Tatum, and just trying to balance out that per game value versus total game value. Yeah, total value.
You got Beal and Booker as well who are in that mix, but once you get past 9, the question marks really kick in. And it is a steepish drop off because of it wouldn't be a steep drop off if we knew Kawhi was playing majority 70 games, like he'd be up there, like he's top 6. Like there's no worries about that, but. When your next group of guys after the top 9 is Kawhi, Irving, Embiid, Durant, LeBron, and then it's a bunch of other guys who you're not sure you have the faith to be that good. It's like, do I balance out games played versus maybe these guys break out? It is It is a real rough spot to be in, but Kawhi sits on his own in tier 1 here. For the small forwards, in tier 2, we do have the aforementioned LeBron James. We have Paul George and we have Kevin Durant. We spoke about Paul George yesterday. Kevin Durant, now people will look at this and I think his ADP sits him at about 14. It's the early second round. Of course, he's coming off an Achilles tear. Now, Achilles surgeries have improved and recovery has improved for them. This dude's 32 years of age. So I'm not expecting him to come out and A, play big minutes, B, play in back-to-backs. And by big minutes, I mean he's not playing 35, 32, 33 maybe. And does he see a marginal decrease in that just burst of getting to the rim, of hitting shots instead of at 52% from the field? Is he 51%? 50%? Is his ability to block shots reduced from, does he block 1.1 down to 0.9? And that seems so inconsequential, but it's big when you're talking about a guy who's a top 5 player. If all of those things fall off, free throw rate, field goal percentage, 3-point percentage, block rate, and then he misses games, it's real tough for Durant. I don't want to be stuck drafting him.
See, and I was just reading some comments about we should disagree, and I will disagree with you at this point. I would almost take the gamble with him in that late first round because I'm not confident with Embiid. I'm not confident with Irving. I think it's a little bit too early for Booker. I'm worried about LeBron James sitting early. So I think at that sort of 10 to 12 range, you almost need to take the gamble and perhaps you take Kevin Durant and Kawhi Leonard and hope that one of them can blow up big and be a top 5 player, because you're not going to have a chance to compete against teams with James Harden and Anthony Davis and Karl Anthony Towns and Steph Curry, because you're already at so much of a disadvantage. So you might as well, as long as you're not playing in a massive money league, you might as well take the chance, draft one, if not both, and just hope for a home run.
Yeah, that was going to be my question for you there. So if you pick an injury risk player in your first round at pick 10 or 11, do you double it up in round 2 and do you go, well, look, if this works, it's great. I've got Kyrie and I've got Durant, or I've got Embiid and I've got Kawhi. And if it hits, forget about it. You guys are in real trouble. Do you do that, or do you just sort of hedge your bets?
Well, normally I play really safe, and I'm very safe in the first 2, 3, even 4 rounds. I like to build the core of my team who I can rely on night after night after night. And by the core, I mean sort of my core 5 or 6 players. But like I just mentioned in this instance, you might have to, because how are you going to compete with if you have Kyrie Irving and Devin Booker, how are they going to compete with a healthy and a fully firing Steph Curry or James Harden? It's going to be so difficult unless you can nail some mid-round picks that blow up and become top 50 players. That's where you can sort of win your draft and win your league. But early on, like I said, you might just have to take that chance on Kevin Durant. Hope he plays 60 to 65 games and puts up top 5 per game value.
You have to smash your middle picks, and I think that's possible, because it is hard to lose your draft in the first round, or to lose your league in the first round. It is hard to do that. The risk you do have of losing it is taking 2 guys who play 50 games. That's probably the only way you really lose in that first round. But winning it is about smashing the mid-rounders and smashing the late-rounders and getting those guys and working the waiver wire. That's really where the money is made in those scenarios. So while you say it is hard to compete against Harden and Curry, it can be done, because you can grab 40 spots of value on the people who take Harden, and then in round 5 they go, well, I'm going to take Eric Bledsoe, which is a totally fine pick, but then you pick Derek White 50 picks later and he ends up better than Eric Bledsoe. That's where you win, because you end up with 2 fifth round players instead of 1, and 2 6th round players instead of 1, and that's where you can try and, now of course if the Harden guy does that as well, then you're in a fair bit of trouble, but you got to try and use your advantage in that area. We've talked about LeBron already, we've talked about Paul George already, so let's move on to tier 3, and there is just one bloke here. It is of course Big Face Coffee, the man Jim Butler in tier 3. People,
what's his nickname?
Big Face. He had that coffee company in the bubble, Big Face Coffee.
Okay.
And he was charging $20 a cup. And the man who definitely is going to lead the league in leaking stories himself of working out at 3 a.m. He would definitely lead the league in that. It's not usually a fantasy category. Now, people are saying, I'd take Jimmy Butler in the top 15. There's no way for me that he's going in that area. He's 31. He's not pushing those numbers out again as the 23rd player last year. But he's pretty solidly here in this 2nd to 3rd round type area.
Yeah, I think sort of that late second is fair. Really solid points, assists, the steals, are really good. won't hit the threes, and yeah, just that slight concern early on that the Heat may rest him due to that shortened off season, and we know Jimmy Butler doesn't have that rearview mirror in his car either, so no looking back for Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, absolutely no looking back for Jimmy Butler. Let's look at tier 4. Chris Middleton, I think we talked about him in the shooting guards tier from memory, so we don't need to talk about him there. He's sitting there in tier 4. He's just as straightforward as they come. In tier 5, though, is a real interesting one. Gordon Hayward, Gordo, the big Gordstar. Now, in Charlotte, his ADP and ranking absolutely flummoxes me. It is baffling. He was the 50th ranked player last year, Matty. He had a low usage. He played 33 minutes a night, and now sites are just saying, well, I know you're going to a team where you're going to get significantly more shots and be the man, but we think you're going to be 2 rounds worse. I cannot understand it.
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, we won't worry about those rankings, and ADP will just focus on what we're doing. But that's got to be one of the worst contracts of the offseason.
Oh, it's horrible.
Years, 120 million, 31 years old or whatever he is. And a massive chunk of his value comes from efficiency. We have him projected at nearly 50% from the field, nearly 85% from the free throw line. So take that into consideration, and maybe more of a player for suited for a rotisserie league rather than a head-to-head league as well.
Yeah, if you've missed out on points in the early rounds, though, like a guy that's a 5th, 6th, 7th round guy, depending on how your league's looking, he could average 20 points a game, and he should pretty comfortably here. I think we're almost getting back to, not quite the same, but almost back to Utah levels of Gordon Hayward, given the surrounding talent there, and he's going to see a lot more usage instead of being that 3rd or 4th option that he was in Boston most of the time. Tier 6 is 3 guys. There is an established star, DeMar DeRozan, who we've talked about plenty yesterday. There's Brandon Ingram, who really broke out, and there's Michael Porter Jr. Now, people are going to have the questions for me. Matt, maybe you've got the question for me as well. Why is Brandon Ingram projected to be down this low? Why have you got him in tier, whatever number this is, tier 6? He was amazing last year. He was the 28th ranked player. But, Matt, do you have the question? Do you say, what's going on? Why is Ingram so low?
What's going on, Josh? Why is Ingram so low?
I'm glad you asked, because I tell you why. Because when he played in the bubble, he struggled. That's not the exact reason, but the reason is he played a handful of games with Zion Williamson. And when he played those games with Zion Williamson, it wasn't as good for Brandon Ingram. And that is why, look, his numbers aren't crazy in terms of the projections, but it's also, when you just knock the top a little bit off what he did last year, this is down to where he falls. Zion is going to eat that usage. He was the number 1 guy for the whole season until, those 10 games or so, or 15 games, whatever it was, that Zion came back in. He also took an unprecedented leap, 20 percentage points plus in his free throw percentage. If that falls off and he goes back, and his shooting numbers in the bubble, correct me if I'm wrong, they were bad. They weren't good at all. If he goes back to being an average shooter, or worse, a below average shooter, then you're going to hate burning a pick in the 20s where his ADP is on Fantrax. You're going to hate that, because that is taking him at absolute peak value. So that's why I've got him down low. It's the Zion effect, and it's just me hedging my bets a little bit on some of the efficiency.
And the other thing with Brandon Ingram, when you do look at his projections, and I was saying this to someone the other day, right? I tend to not look at the points per game, the threes per game, the rebounds per game. I look at the volume and the impact that's going to have on the category and on my team. And once again, Brandon Ingram doesn't do anything stand out. Like, his best category is points, and it's a plus 0.92.
Yeah, like by a long way as well.
Elite players, we want them at sort of 2+. So he's not doing anything in particular. And later on, for Basketball Monster, I'll write an article around categorical scarcity, which I write every year. But I just don't see the real value and the point of taking him this early when there are similar players later on. Like, I would much rather draft Ja Morant and get his 8 to 9 assists per game and get a big advantage in that category, because I can't find those 8 assists at, pick 70 or 80, where there's a heap of small forwards and power forwards later on in the draft who you can find, who can get some mediocre points, not quite at that Brandon Ingram level, but also those, 5 rebounds, couple of threes, and a steal per game. We can get them later on. So it's all about what you can get at a particular point in a draft and what you can get later. I don't see the value in drafting Brandon Ingram inside the top 50.
Yeah, look, Ingram's numbers and DeRozan's numbers are real similar, and not that far behind where Gordon Hayward was in that tier above. So I think that's probably the right spot. And then you got the other guy that's in this mix, and that's Michael Porter. And you don't have to take him anywhere near this area, because at this point, his ADP on Yahoo is outside the top 100. I am projecting, and this is not a wild guess, this is me talking to Denver people. They say that they are absolutely confident that he is the starter this year. That don't worry about what's happening. He is starting and he is playing big minutes and they are giving him the ball, and it's pressure coming from other areas that aren't the coach to get him in that role. And he will start and he will be a big, big part. And I've only got him playing, not even huge starters minutes, but his game actually is fantasy friendly with his usage, with his efficiency, with his, to be honest, really, really good rebounding numbers. So defensively, he struggles. There's no doubt about that. But he's going to hit threes. He's going to score. He's going to rebound. And if he starts and he plays 30 minutes, he's going to absolutely piss on this ADP. And again, you don't take him here, but this is the value that you can get from Mickey Porter if you are drafting him later.
And so we're saying then that Porter's starting at the 3 and Millsap starting at the 4?
That's what I believe at this point. That's my understanding. Yeah. It could go the other way around. It could go with him at the 4 and Barton at the 3. But what I've been told is that it will be Millsap starting.
And then the flow-on effect, that makes Barton an interesting draft pick later on, because we know how good he is in that 6-man role where he can just do whatever he likes, literally.
And you won't have Porter in that second unit as well.
No. So Barton's scoring, he's passing, he's rebounding, he's doing all of those things. So that's another rotation and positional battle to watch, through training camps and preseason to see what happens, to keep an eye on both of those guys.
Look, it could change. Look, I could be wrong and the information I've been given is wrong, but this is what I've been told. And I was told at the end of last season, this is what will be happening this year. I was told again in this off-season, this is what would be happening. So I'm going with it for now, and we'll just see how it ends up panning out. Tier 7. This is the guy, Matt, who was the third-ranked player in the bubble. It's Tony Warren Jr., because he was insane. Now, I thought that people would have some criticism of this, but it matches up really with his ADP of him being in this area, because he's not going to be able to continue to shoot that well, to play that many minutes, to have that usage. Remember, no Domantas Sabonis in the bubble. So every shot, and a shithouse Victor Oladipo and Malcolm Brogdon coming back from injury. Warren's not going to have that opportunity again. He's not going to be that hot again. So I think this seems totally fair, and I'm glad that I don't feel like a complete outlier in terms of where I've got him projected.
Yeah, once again, super efficient, 50% from the field and over 80% from the free throw line. We know he's a solid scorer, but what he's really done since moving across from Phoenix to Indiana is increased his 3-ball and then also his steals as well. So it really rounded out his game, and it's showing, for fantasy and showing in his ranking right now.
Yeah, I'm happy with him in this area. Pretty straightforward. Let's go to tier 8. Jaylen Brown and Tobias Harris. Now, we talked about Jaylen Brown yesterday. Someone dropped a comment on the YouTube video that said, man, you guys are so way down on Jaylen. He's a great defender. That's great. He doesn't get any defensive stats, though. It doesn't translate across to fantasy. He was a 20-point per game scorer last year. I think this is about the right area for him, but we did talk about him yesterday. But let's talk about Tobias Harris, because a narrative's been thrown around, Matt, that he had his best ever season under Doc Rivers, and that's not a narrative because it's 100% true. His current coach is now Doc Rivers. But that doesn't mean that all of a sudden, well, Tobias Harris, that's it. Loves his coach. Coach loves him. It's all over. Because when he was playing with the Clippers, it was Tobias Harris, and then it was like the list manager, Ty Wallace. Well, that's the guys that he were running with. Now, it's Simmons and Embiid. So I'm not, you can disagree with me for the sake of fighting if you want, but I don't think you're going to disagree with the fact that we're not expecting Toby to go back to being a top 30 guy just because Doc Rivers is in town.
No, definitely not. And we spoke about boring players yesterday. I think
he's the boringest player in the league.
Tobias Harris is as boring as they come. That 20 points, once again, just doesn't give you a big boost in any category. And we spoke about Brandon Ingram. Tobias Harris is doing sort of similar stats, a couple of rounds later. And I'm going to give you probably another 3 or 4 guys coming up who can do similar things again, who you can find another 1, 2, 3 rounds later again. So, I'd want nothing to do with Tobias Harris again this year. Sorry.
He and CJ McCollum are guys that are consistently overranked in early rankings on fantasy provider sites and ADP every time. And they are the boringest fantasy players who score points and do really nothing else. And they are consistently overrated by 10 to 20 spots almost every year. And it just happened, and it's happened again this year. Just a consistent, it's not on every site, but there's always one site that will push these guys too high. And Toby is one of those blokes here. Tier 9. Kelly Oubre Jr., one of your former mates at the Sun. OG Anunoby, of course. I'll have to retire the Jedi nickname because, of course, there is an Obi who is now in the league whose number is 1. So the OG Anunoby is now the Scarf Man.
But what about scarves?
OG.
Balenciaga
Stop,
ones.
OG. You better stop, OG.
Yes, you better stop indeed. So he's there with Kelly Oubre, and he's there with your current boy, Mikal Bridges, who, with Oubre's departure, should be getting quite a few minutes. It took Monty Williams a while last year, Matt, to work out that Bridges should be starting and should be playing big minutes, but surely he hasn't forgotten that, has he?
I wouldn't think so. I think he's pretty much locked in there as the starting small forward between Devin Booker and who's the Jay Crowder, who's the other one we signed, who should start at the 4. Cam Johnson off the bench. But Kelly Oubre, another guy, points, rebounds, threes, the steals. I think he'd be a really handy player there in Golden State and for your fantasy teams. And then OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges. We're talking about these old-fashioned sort of glue guys who we were talking about years ago, who they just contribute in those steals and blocks and threes combinations, some handy rebounds as well. And Mikal Bridges really, really efficient from both the field and the free throw line. Doesn't need a lot of touches, but can do some damage. So, yeah, like both of these guys, just to plug in between some strong guards and some strong bigs. Both of these wings to plug in between, your guards and your bigs.
So let's, we're throwing out fake fights and stuff here. Shout out to Kendrick Perkins and stuff like that. So let me throw out a hot take for you. OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges are 2 of the best 5 wing defenders in the NBA. It's not that hot, is it? I think it's real.
2 of the best 5 wing defenders. So we're talking, Kawhi?
Yeah, Kawhi's dropped off. He's fine. I don't know if he's as good as these guys anymore. He'd probably be in the mix in the top 5.
Are we counting Drew Holiday?
No, I think he's more of a guard defender.
He's a guard. We're counting Paul George?
Yes, I think Anunoby's got him covered pretty comfortably. Bridges, I reckon he's close. Marcus Smart's more of a guard defender.
Yeah, Simmons.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't know what you count him as. It's more of a forward defender. He can defend guards. He's close. Giannis, more of a big defender than a wing defender, but he's in that mix. I don't think Jason Tatum's on these guys' levels.
No, neither do I.
They've got to be up there, surely.
Hard to argue with.
Yeah, if people listening and watching this, if you think I'm wrong, drop a comment below. But these guys, and if you do think I'm wrong, tell me who the 5 guys better are than Anunoby and Bridges. Not that it means jack shit for fantasy, because it can be a good defender, Klay Thompson, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, and still be shit house in terms of defensive stats for fantasy.
Are we still talking like a Josh Richardson?
I think these guys are better. I think Richardson's
better?
Capable. I think these guys are comfortably better than Richardson at this point in terms of defensive ability. I don't know. I don't know who the 5 guys are that you find better on the, and that's
PJ Tucker. I know he's played a lot of 4 and 5.
I think he's more of a big. He's more of a big defender. How good is he chasing around the perimeter? I think that's the difference there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know who else.
Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, when he's locked in, maybe. But these guys are real defensive specialists. Anyway, we're talking too much about this, but it is something to think about. And drop a comment below if you have some other names there for us. It's something I just brought up off the top. Tier 10. It is Otto Porter Jr., a guy that used to be quite a good defender, but then I don't know what's going on. He played like 24 minutes a night last year, completely fell apart. I think he will go back to being a starter. I don't know if we're going to get any mysterious, hey, this guy's not injured, but he's going to sit back-to-backs and have limited minutes like we did at the start of last season. And I don't think he's losing his job to Patrick Williams to begin the year. His ADP is all over the shop, but I think he's pretty solid at this area. And if everything goes right, Matt, he could smash through and be 3-4 tiers higher, I'd say. It seems unlikely that everything goes right, but he could. Yeah,
definitely. I'd take a gamble on him, in the mid-rounds. And like we said, if it pays off and he puts up top 50, 60 value, then you've got another 5th-round player. Once again, really nice steals and threes combination. Doesn't hurt you anywhere in particular. Hopefully Chicago, new coach, a bit more confidence, and some of these younger players all starting to develop and build and bond together. Who knows? It could be a season for guys like Otto Porter and Wendell Carter Jr. and Larry Marketing.
Tier 11. One bloke, Andy Wiggins. Yeah, look, if you're talking about points leagues, and people have asked, are these tiers for points leagues? No, they're not. We mentioned this on the first podcast on the point guard tier 1, that it's for category leagues, 8 categories specifically. It's for 9 categories as well, because we don't really pay any attention to turnovers. Andy Wiggins in Golden State. He looked better last year. Did he? He looked a little bit better, but I'm not banking on him to be better than significantly better. He was the 77th ranked player last year, so to be fair to him, he did improve. But I think this is probably fair go for Wiggo here, as he now has to share the ball in Golden State with Steph Curry and the incoming Kelly Oubre, and he didn't have those things last year.
Yep, and Draymond Green, hopefully a fullish season from him as well. But just once again, I know I keep talking about efficiency, but the 43% on nearly 16 attempts and the free throw around 70%, it's just a massive drain for both of those categories, and it really undoes any of the good work that he does in terms of the scoring and flirts with the 3 steal and block per game. It just, like I said, just unravels all that hard work.
It sure does. Tier 12, there's one bloke here. You talked about him already, Farton Will Barton. We didn't see him in the bubble or the playoffs with a knee injury. It is an absolute worry to me, because the year before he missed basically the all season with a hip problem, I believe it was. So the injuries are piling up here for Barto. He's about to turn 30. He's going to get his run off the bench. There's no doubt about that. But that top 50, top 60 type stuff that he did a few years ago, I don't think we're trusting that. But absolutely fine at this point in the draft. Some okay assist numbers where they're real hard to find now at this area. But I don't have any sort of upside faith in him.
Once again, Leafy, like we were saying before, if Otto Porter is starting, if Paul Millsap's starting and Will Barton's getting 30 minutes off the bench and the majority of those where he's just doing whatever he likes, then it could work. I'm happy to take the gamble on it here. And like we said, if it doesn't work out, then so be it. But if you are drafting closer to the start of the season, then I'd be watching that development really closely.
Absolutely. I'm going to have articles up on Basketball Monster about things we're watching in preseason as well, because that will be one of them for sure. The Nuggets rotation. Shout out to the Hawks rotation as well. It's going to be absolutely glued in to see what's going on there. The last tier, we have got 3... No, we don't. We have 4 guys, because I can't count. In tier 13, we've got Dunk Robinson, we've got Joe Harris, we've got Danny Green, and we've got Joshie Richardson, who's the highest upside player out of that quartet.
He is. We've seen him before when he was at Miami. He had a really strong fantasy game, and hopefully he can get back to something similar. Another one to keep an eye on, see how his off-season goes. And
he's just not going to have the ball, though.
Can translate. And Luka and potentially Porzingis, we know he's going to miss the start of the season, so there might be a couple of extra touches go his way. Joe Harris and Duncan Robinson. And Danny Green's probably more of a streamer for threes, but Harris and Duncan Robinson can just drop threes with the best of them. So, like we always say, you don't need to target threes early when you can find them this late in the draft and off the waiver wire.
That is correct. You don't need to target them early. Finding threes that are efficient. Yeah, that can be something that's tough to do. But in terms of just streaming in that one category, it's not that hard to do. You can find those players all over the place to grab in. Now, there are a few guys here that people will say, why aren't they on the list, Matt? And you're talking like Marcus Morris's or Isaac Okoro or Troy Brown or Joe Ingles, and we have to cut it off somewhere. Eric Gordon, like where are these guys? We have to cut it off at some spots, so this is where we've cut it off. But of course, you can see the projections for all these players over on Basketball Monster. We'll be back tomorrow, and we're going to have power forward tiers with that one. Matt, I look forward to talking to you in 5 more minutes when we record it, but it will be released tomorrow, so stay tuned for that show then. Thank you for coming on again.
Thank you, Josh, and I look forward to talking to you too.
Guys, subscribe, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube. Give a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, guys. We are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.